Oh, baby.
You can't scare me with your I record every.
Well,
That's
you
not
didn't back down to my threat, did you?
no. I said I will show up 2 minutes early.
I see that.
Yeah.
Son of a bitch, Father.
How are you?
Oh, what is this Monopoly jersey you got?
Oh my God, you have to see it. Look at this. I'm such a baller.
Wow, you're cool.
Super
Whoa.
cool. Super cool. Is this on
Wow.
YouTube also so that everyone
Yeah, I'll put it
can
on the tube
good?
because
Good.
I've never seen that before. That's actually
Yeah.
I'm gonna use a New England term. That's wicked cool. So
Thank
that's wow. Well, thanks for fitting me in,
Of
because
course.
we got
No,
a
thank
big
you
trip
for
coming up.
I do. Well, pun intended, right?
You're a savage.
A massive trip coming up.
Yes, yes, you do. Are you going? When's the festival?
It starts tomorrow. The first set we want to see is at 5:15,
Mm-hmm.
and then it won't stop until Monday morning at 1, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, what's the game plan? Because I've never been to I've only I've only been to sad boy music festivals. Okay,
Yeah.
so
So,
like
yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's it's sad, it's acoustic.
Mm,
You get to bed on time, after a
that is
long
sad. That's the saddest part. What is it like? I think I'm guessing there are 5 stages,
Okay.
and they start around 4 o'clock each day.
Okay.
And the stages have themes. So there might be a sad boy stage.
Oh,
I don't know.
very cool.
I wouldn't, it'd be so far away from where I am. But there's a chill stage, there's a house, there's a techno, there's a live,
Mm,
there's a main. So essentially, you and your friend, your rave fam, just run around from stage to stage, seeing the DJs that you want to see.
wow. Have
Yeah.
you always been a raver, as the kids say?
Yeah, no, I haven't. I used to be into pop music. I've not missed a Backstreet Boy concert.
That answers. I have a list of questions, and the first question was Backstreet or NSYNC. So you already answered that question.
Yeah. No, once I met Katie, I
Uh-huh.
discovered EM because I was head in the books. Like, I don't even think I went to a concert, honestly, that wasn't the Backstreet Boys prior to Katie. She just
Wow.
country music she introduced me to,
Yeah.
EDM she introduced me to. So no, I wasn't always a raver.
Wow. So your Spotify playlist really is like, what are we doing? What the fuck we doing here, Jamie? We were listening to Backstreet. Like, what is where are we going?
Yeah, yeah. And then because I'm Canadian, there's Celine, there's Avril, there's Shania,
Wow.
classics. Yeah, I
Yeah.
gotta go home every once in a while,
Where in Canada are you from? I didn't even know you were Canadian.
Yeah, Toronto.
Changes everything.
That's,
Wow.
yeah.
Toronto. When did you come to the States?
7 years ago. So when I was 29.
Wow. What, for any reason?
Yeah, a girl slid into my DMs.
Wow, I love that.
And I married her. Plot twist.
I love that. Wow, that's freaking cool. Well, didn't even introduce you. Why don't you tell the people who you are,
Yeah.
okay? And then we'll go from there.
As what else do you need to know? You've done the math. I'm 36. I'm married. I'm Canadian, and I rave.
That's right.
I'm pretty motivational Monday through
Mm-hmm.
Friday.
Yes,
Uh, and then do as I say, not as I do Friday night through Sunday
that's
afternoon.
right.
No, I mean, I've been a trainer. It's the only job I've ever had. Brief stint working for Canada's largest bodybuilding magazine as their editor in chief, but I
Cool.
was training on the side. And then honestly, the training got so big, the quality of my work went down.
Mm,
Boss gave me an ultimatum. So really, it is essentially the only job I've ever truly loved.
yeah, that's amazing. So I guess what got you into this shit? Because if it's been your only job, like there had to be like a catalyst where you're like, I want to fucking do this job.
Yeah. So I had an eating disorder that started when I was 11, and
Mm.
it reached its peak sometime between 15 and 18. But 15 is when I got into the gym for the first time, because I lied and said I was 16. But prior to that, I could only ever run and do push-ups in secret and
Mm.
sit-ups and lunges in my bedroom. Or like when my parents would leave, I would use my mom's Suzanne Summers and Richard Simmons VHS tapes,
Yeah.
and just like on loop for 4 hours, Ryan. And
Yeah.
that was my exercise. But finally, when I was 15 and looked old enough, I went to the gym at the Jewish Community Center in Toronto, and I
Yep.
got a membership, and I fell in love with weight training. And then it was no longer, I mean, granted, I was still sick, but it was no longer about doing endless hours of cardio. I
Mm.
was hitting I used Arnold's encyclopedia.
Yep.
It was like a 2.5 hour workout in the morning and two and a half
Uh-huh.
hours in the evening, 6 days a week. And I'm
Wow.
like, perfect. I'm so big. I wasn't. I was hospitalized 3 times between 15 and 16.
Wow.
And I finally got out, but I was obsessed. And
Mm.
I started competing when I was 18.
Wow.
And I was posting a lot on the bodybuilding.com forums. And honestly, because
Mm.
they couldn't see my body and they didn't know what I looked like, I was an authority figure, because I
Wow.
was in school for kinesiology. I was super bright, charismatic, but they didn't know that I was, 97 pounds and 5'8".
Mm. Yeah.
So I started getting online clients and was like, this is so dope. And it just, yeah. So first client at 18, 19. And again, now I'm 36, and this is
Wow.
all I want to do.
Oh shit. So let's well, one, I feel like everybody started with the Arnold Encyclopedia, just fucking
You had
working
to.
out so much.
Yeah.
I love that. And I love that there's so many people I feel like who got their start on like the bodybuilding forums, because that's I used to just get my workouts were all like bodybuilding.com workouts. Like all
Yep.
the free programs that they had, that's like where I started, like supplementation, all that's where I used to buy my supplements, all that
Yeah.
stuff.
It's just easier. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Absolutely. So let's circle back though, because a big part of or one of the big parts of you is you mentioned like your eating disorder, your emotional eating. Can you kind of touch on that? Like what you were maybe now that
Yeah.
you've had some reflection where it stemmed from, and then like how it sort of translated as you got older and all that?
Yeah. So, okay. So two great questions. The first one, in terms of how it started. I mean,
Hmm.
I have an opinion, my therapist has an opinion, and my mom has an opinion.
Yeah,
But at the end of the day, I think my opinion is the one that matters. And
absolutely.
I think it had something to do with growing up with a father who was terminally ill. He had
Mm,
Lou Gehrig's disease. He was diagnosed before I was born. He
mm,
was put on a ventilator when I was 3.
wow.
And I only ever saw him getting attention because he was ill.
Mm,
And in my head, it wasn't that I wanted to steal the attention from him. Absolutely not. But it was like, huh, people love you when you're sick.
yeah.
I think I mismatched the message there. So that's what got things started. I was also in a transition phase. They sent me, oh my God. I went to a different school.
Yep.
The school that I was in the South campus closed because there weren't enough kids. So they shipped us up to the North campus. I didn't know anyone. So I also think I did that thing where I wanted to disappear and not be noticed. So I physically made myself disappear.
Mm,
And then I just picked up random shit along the way that just made me more.
hmm.
And then, of course, discovering bodybuilding. I mean, I didn't
Yeah.
have the traditional eating disorder where you look in the mirror and you think you're fat. I picked up, it was called Muscle Media 2000. It was an old magazine. And I think it was Lee Labrada or Bob Paris so one of the smaller, more aesthetic, like they be classic physique now.
Hmm.
And I was like, they are body goals. I love this so much.
Yeah.
And I thought I looked like them because I knew that I was 4% body fat. That part was undeniable. I didn't think
Hmm.
I was overweight. I just thought I was like 150 pounds
Mm,
versus 95 pounds.
yep.
So the competitive bodybuilding also kind of perpetuated the eating disorder.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it, and I think that's the cool part. I love that you're been to therapy and you've gone to therapy to really, I'm a huge proponent of it, but I think that's the cool part, especially when you're past sort of a lot of the muck that you have to grind through when you're going through it. But that's the cool part when you can kind of look back and say like, oh, like this seeing my father sick is sort of your first awareness of like what attention is and maybe how it's developed,
Mhm.
and also maybe like that relationship with attention and validation, right? And then also you fast forward to go to a new school where it's like you want the exact opposite, right? Like you didn't want the attention. So then you sort of like you said, withered away physically. I think that's really cool now for you to look back on and be like, holy shit, like you can start putting the pieces together, like almost like a detective who's got like three different leads on their board on that stuff. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for saying so.
Yeah.
And then I think the second part of your question had something to do with what it looks like now. It had something to do
Yeah,
with
yeah,
the,
yeah. So how did it thank you.
yeah, no
Thanks for bringing
problem.
me back. So how did it? So yeah, so that's where it stemmed from, right? So I guess how did you sort of dig your because you I guess you've led it up to like when you started bodybuilding, physique competing, all that. How did you get out of that? Like, or what was the moment where you're like, I need to get out of this?
Yeah. So it's definitely a black hole. I mean,
Mm,
it's a mental illness like any other. It's depression, it's anxiety, it's PTSD, it's a black cloud above your head.
hmm
Um, and I was about 21 years old. And I think it just occurred to me as I was approaching that age that if I didn't get better by my 22nd birthday,
mm,
remember, I started my first diet when I was 11, that I would have had an eating disorder an equal amount of time that I would have not had an eating disorder.
wow.
Is so sobering because then what's your
Yeah.
identity? Right? You start your
Right.
diet when you're 11, you're 22, you're still dieting.
Mm,
What you missed out on? So that was one sobering thought that was like, maybe I should get some help for this. Another one is after my dad passed away, I went back to live with my mom and I woke up one evening, like in the middle of the night, and she was in the doorway, and I saw her shadow or her silhouette, and I said, "What are you doing there?" And she said, "I always watch you sleep. I always check in on you." And Ryan, I'm like a 20-year-old.
yeah.
Like, your mother doesn't need to. What's the problem?
Right.
And she said, "I always watch you sleep." And I said, "Why do you watch me sleep?" And she said, "Because I need to make sure the covers are still moving."
Mm, wow.
Okay, I've done
Yeah.
some damage. I see that
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
So that was it. That was it. I called up. Okay. So again, hospitalized at 15 and I was
hmm
22 now. So I called the same social worker that I was assigned 6 years ago. And
Mm,
I said, "Hey, are you still working with teenagers with eating disorders? Because I couldn't appreciate what you were doing then, but I'm certainly open to your help now." She's
yeah.
like, "Absolutely. I have a private practice. Like, come in to see me as frequently as you want." And I paid her cash and essentially did all of the work that I could have done 6 years earlier, but just was not ready to do or
Yeah.
to yet.
I think that is such a key, and I'm sure when you called her, she was like, fuck yeah, she's ready. But like I think that's such a key to change is when you're actually ready for it, right? Or you're open for it. That's like a huge catalyst that's going to start beginning your journey.
Yeah.
Um, you have a lot of cool stories, and the reason I think I resonated a ton with you when I met you at the Real Coaches Summit, and I loved your presentation because like you're a fucking comedian on stage, so I was like, all right, let's go, she's funny. Uh,
Thank you.
and then two, you had such practical advice for emotional eating, and your story was also very cool too. Um, can you talk about a little, because it is a huge part of your journey, and I imagine uh, a lot of how you work now, but can you talk a little bit about when that story about coming out and how that was such a pivotal time for you?
Yeah. So I was, and I don't, I want to preface everything. even
Mm-hmm.
the damn now I wish I would have said more when we started recording. So first of all, I don't blame my mom for anything.
Yes.
Yeah,
Shout
thank
out,
you,
mama.
therapy, right? I also, again, it'll make sense once I tell the story. I don't blame the Jewish community.
Yes.
Guys, you guys are off the hook, okay? So I grew up in it wasn't conservative. We were quite liberal, like,
Hmm.
but it was a Jewish bubble. And I had gone to private Jewish school starting from junior kindergarten
Mm.
all the way through 12th grade. And then for like the summer between grades 8, 9, and 10 and 11, no, grade 11, I was in the hospital. Just kidding. 8, 9, and 10, Jewish summer camp. So I was only ever surrounded by white upper middle
Mm.
class Jews who looked and behaved just like me. And
Right.
Jewish girls grow up to marry nice Jewish boys, and everyone becomes a doctor, lawyer, or accountant.
Mm.
And it's just the way, and it works, and it's awesome. But until it wasn't,
Hmm.
so I was 26 and I was on track. I was doing the things. I was engaged to a nice Jewish boy that I've been dating on and off for 5 years. And he was the laundry list of things because you get married around 25. Ideally, you enjoy a couple years of marriage. You have your first kid by 30, second one definitely by 35. So I'm
Hmm.
like, yes, 26, I got this. Um, but I couldn't. There was
Mm.
something missing. There was a fundamental component, right? People talk about the it factor. Like, again, he was the laundry list of everything I should have wanted, but no
Mm.
spark, no chemistry. The
Yeah.
physics was lacking a little bit, and I had to break up with him. I didn't know what it was.
Wow.
I just knew that I couldn't. And I called off our engagement and I said, please know that it's not you. And I know this is so cliche, but I actually think there's something I need to figure out. And there's something that's going to make me happy. And there's someone that's going to make you so much happier, right? Because if
Hmm.
you're not it for me, then I can't be it for you. That's not how the universe,
1000%.
right? And he said, well, who am I to get in the way of Jamie Filer's happiness? And we held hands for,
Wow.
he left that night and it was amicable because again, there was no problem.
Yeah.
So fast forward, I ended up coming out. I figured out what it was. It was that I didn't like men.
Yeah.
Uh, and I told my mom, again, my father had passed away, but I told my mom, and I said, hey, I have a girlfriend. And she said, okay, do you mind if I ask you 2 questions? And I said, oh boy, yeah, sure. Let's play this game. And she said, okay, just my first question. Do you think you'll ever go back to men? I don't know, mom. And I knew Ryan, I knew who she had in mind too. It was
She had a
a
guy in mind
Jewish
for you?
doctor. Yeah, it was a Jewish doctor. And I had gone to school with his twin sister, and she knew like the twin brother was great guy, great
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah.
And no, like I will not, I don't think so, but I don't want to rule it out. But I
Right.
will say no for now. And then
Right.
she said, and if you and your partner further down the line decide that you want to have kids, will you carry it so that it's Jewish? And I said, if those are the only questions you have about my sexuality,
Right.
I think we're good.
We're in a good start. Very good place.
And my friends were so awesome and welcoming. They were like,
Yeah.
"Thought you were a tomboy," and I was like, "They're synonymous." But
I love
that's
it.
this is where so that was essentially my coming out story. It was no
Wow.
big deal. I didn't get shunned. I didn't get kicked out of the house. I
Right.
lived retail. My siblings accepted me. They loved me.
Mm.
We're so
Yeah.
good.
I think that's amazing. I think, well, one, I can only imagine the anxiety and like how much you're probably storing up, like trying, like that moment when you were thinking, like, or maybe that moment you realize, I don't want to marry this person. And this isn't my path. Like, was like, what were your emotions like for that decision? Because I can almost feel like the tension
Yeah.
for that.
So it wasn't, and I don't want to say that I'm jealous, but
Yeah.
like Katie has known that she's bisexual since she was 15.
Mm,
And I think that's so amazing. And her mom is actually gay.
wow.
So she had that modeled for her literally from the time, well, she was 5 when her mom came out.
Yeah.
And then, now in 2024, kids are coming out at 7.
Mm-hmm.
We're not getting political, but like
Right.
of the story, they have a third gender now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm only 36. I don't consider myself old, but that wasn't an option when I was younger.
Right.
So it's like, man, I was holding on to this secret sexuality. There was no coming out of the closet. I was already
Mm-hmm.
out of the, like, huh, this
Yeah.
is this is available to me.
Nice closet. Another one.
Oh, yeah. So obviously I have no regrets other than,
Yeah.
of course, breaking the heart of my ex-fiance, but
Right.
it's what had to happen for us to go where we needed to go.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that's such a relatable thing for a lot of people is once you sort of step into more of who you are, it does feel very freeing and very just feels right, right? Like it just feels like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, like I should have been doing this a long time ago. And I think that's, for my family, and it's not something I talk about just because like my content's mostly, I guess, different, but my family is, I was born in a family where my aunt's a lesbian. I had two lesbian aunts. I had one cousin who's transgender, another cousin who's adopted from the Dominican Republic. So it was like for me growing up, that was such a awesome foundation to have because I didn't grow up thinking this is right, this is wrong, you shouldn't be this, shouldn't be that. I grew up thinking like, oh, you love me, you're showing me love, like I'm showing you love back, right? And like keeping it very simple like that. And my
Yeah.
aunt's like the first person ever teach me how to throw a baseball. So it's
That
really,
tracks.
yeah. So it's just watch me throw that ball.
Yeah.
But I think that's such it's great that you had an opening or a loving opening to your next chapter and didn't face as like resistance like as many other people did before. Um, in terms of your emotional eating chapters and all that stuff, you said you went to the social worker and started seeing counseling for that. How did it sort of translate to, or I guess what tactics did she sort of give you that you sort of took on and embraced with coaching?
Yeah. So the first one, and I went over this and tried to give examples in my presentation,
Hmm.
was to lean into the discomfort because
Yeah.
she was the first person who told me that my childhood was awful. Because, right, they ask you, it's like motivational interviewing. They ask you the
Yeah.
question, but they lead you to the answer they want you to,
1000%.
right? How was your childhood? It was great. What do you mean? Look, I'm so well adjusted. And she's like, your father was literally just a body. You know that,
Hmm.
right? He couldn't breathe on his own. He couldn't touch you. He showed up at some of your basketball games, but also sometimes he was in the hospital. And I said, right. And she's like, and he couldn't tell you he loved you with the sound of his own voice. And you never saw your parents affectionate because he couldn't move. And I said, uh-huh.
Hmm.
And she's like, and that was good for you? And I was like, I guess not.
Well, fuck when you say it like that.
I mean, honestly, I was just happy I had a dad, but now I guess
Yeah.
I'm sad.
Hmm.
So, but it was as soon as she realized she is almost like she set me free. Like,
Yeah.
because I can say, man, it did suck and I didn't have a normal childhood, but I am well adjusted. Like, it
Hmm.
could have gone so much worse. I could have blamed my mom, blamed my dad, run away
Yeah.
from home. Again, I lost some years of my life in that transition period, but um if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be so okay when things aren't okay.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
she's the one that really helped me with that. Hey, can you last a minute in a cold plunge? Great, last 3. You can get an
Hmm.
outlift tattoo. Awesome. Sit for 5. Don't move. Get like sink into it as long as you need to.
Hmm.
That way, as soon as you're out of it, all of the blood comes rushing back to your body.
Yeah.
The ink looks so good. Whatever it is gonna
Yeah.
heal.
1000%. I think, and I resonate with that so much because that's one of the advice my therapist had given me like 5 years ago was I was having really bad anxiety, like panic attacks. And one of the things she told me was like, I want you to just sit with it. I want you to sit with anxiety as if you're on a bench and when anxiety sits down next to you, you're just like, cool, here we are, the two of us together, instead of trying to push it away or fight it. Because it's almost like it, kind of like you said, when you don't lean into that discomfort, it lingers longer, right? And it numbs you and it hurts longer and all that. So I think that's so important.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, right. It's one of the reasons you do breath work when you're in the cold plunge. You
Hmm.
just get comfortable in it, right? But if you start hyperventilating and tense up, shit
Hmm.
turns purple. Like it's not a good time. So yeah,
Hmm.
100%. I love that, inviting anxiety to sit on a bench with you.
Yeah. Well, it's easy. It's easier said than done, but it's really fucking hard. But when you do it, it's like, oh, okay, I get it. I get it. So in terms of, so we have like leaning into comfort in like step one, right? In terms of you need to allow these things, the feelings to happen. I guess what's the next step once someone acknowledges that these feelings are here?
I think once you know that there is a cascade of feelings, you
Yeah.
identify. Because
Mm,
panic is different than anxiety, is different than sadness, is different than stress and overwhelm. So
mm,
you figure out what it is that's the problem. You figure out the problem,
yeah.
right? Am I feeling lonely? Am
Mm,
I feeling isolated? Because those are also different. Did I do
yeah.
this to myself, or is some so let's say it is anxiety. Awesome. All of these things, as soon as you, okay, so it's anxiety, great. Sit with it on a bench. Okay. So we've leaned into it. We know we've leaned into it. We know what it is. It's just a problem that needs to be solved.
Mm,
I now ask my friend anxiety, who is now my friend because they've been sitting there long enough that we're just comfortable with each other,
yeah.
the appropriate way to ask it to leave. And these are when the strategies come in. Do you want to do box breathing? And will that make
Mm,
it? Um, Honestly, again, going back to cold plunging, we know that cold plunging helps with anxiety because if you get a physiological shock, you cannot also get a psychological shock.
mm.
Some clients have told me that their therapists have suggested the warhead candy because
Wow.
yeah, it's also an assault on your senses, and you cannot simultaneously want to suck your face in and be
Right.
angry.
Wow.
Right?
That's
If it's
crazy.
let's go get some vitamin D.
Yeah.
So there are solutions to every single issue. So how are you
Hmm.
going to ask the issue to leave?
Yeah, I love that. And I think that is so important is once you acknowledge, like we said, once you feel discomfort, now it's the next step is labeling, right? And I think that is I think most people never get to step one, like you said, is like feeling discomfort, right? That's
Yeah.
that's like the biggest thing that I struggled with that for the longest time too. And then once you're able to label it, like you said, it becomes less of this is overpowering me, and like you mentioned, more so this is my solution towards this label that I just have, this problem, because it becomes almost like a solution-based strategy now.
Yeah. 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 I got the idea specifically about sadness from an Alex Hermosi podcast where he just said, as soon as you start thinking about sadness as a problem, you
Mm,
go into solving. That's all it is. Sadness is just a problem that needs
mm,
solving.
yeah.
And the question is, how long, again, I don't want to take anyone's feelings away from them. How long are you going to sit with it? Because there's an
Hmm.
appropriate time. And then at what point are you going to ask it to leave and solve the problem?
Mm. Here's a question for you. When you were, because you kind of dived into fitness, like bodybuilding, all these other things. You were on bodybuilding.com and all the. When did you, was it your experience that you went through with your own eating disorders, with your own therapy, that you were like, I need to translate this to how I coach people, or did that come later on?
It wasn't even how I coach people, Ryan. It was that I coach people. As soon as I
Mm.
started lifting weights and developed, I mean, again, we're talking like the muscles that 12-year-old boys have just because they have fat, like, that actually count as muscle. It's just
Yep.
energy. So as soon as I had that look, I was like, oh my God, and God,
We
why
made
does
it, baby.
right? It's like, why doesn't every woman who's currently on the elliptical start getting under the squat, like into the
Mm,
squat,
yeah.
because they feel the way I feel. And again, I would like to put the health stuff aside and the mental health stuff.
Yeah.
But the point was, I had confidence that very rarely do people who struggle with mental illness have, because I
Right.
was strong as shit. And I
Yeah.
said, whatever it is they're trying to work off on the elliptical would work a whole lot better if they were deadlifting, squatting, benching, bent over row. And I said, I need to scream this from the rooftop that every woman should be strong. And I said, but I don't know how to do that yet. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe I'll start with like one woman, two women, three women at a time, and I will train all of them and I will teach them the secret. And then that's how, I mean, still, right? Like now we work with anxious and overwhelmed people, but the
Yeah.
secret is still the same. It's move your body and it's
Yeah.
eat, nourish you.
Yeah. I love that. And I like that you simplify it too, right? Like I like that it's more lifestyle factor based and more see what your body can do
Yeah.
and watch how everything else sort of trickles out. I guess how do you what are some strategies? Because you mentioned cold plunge already. We you mentioned like the warhead stuff that someone else had suggested. What are some things that you like to implement for a client or suggest for a client? Because I'm sure it's all individual based, um, to help reduce anxiety, and reduce that feeling of like feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah. So the first thing is typically journaling. And if they've
Hmm.
had a bad experience with journaling, which a lot of people have, they said, all it does is remind me of the shit that's going on. Okay, that's fair. How about we just start with gratitude then? Because then you
Mm,
have no choice but to acknowledge the awesome. And
yeah.
then, so we'll start with gratitude. And then once gratitude is consistent, then we'll do journaling. Um, Big on guided meditation. Again, for a lot of people with
Yeah.
anxiety, don't want to be alone with their thoughts. So music
Hmm.
and visualization doesn't help, but guided meditation, like the Calm app, or you could find a whole bunch of stuff on YouTube about it.
Hmm.
That's really helpful because you don't have to think, you just have to listen and
Yep.
process. Walking outside, vitamin D, blood flow, getting steps, grounding in nature, ideally, again, not with your phone. Uh, Actual exercise when they're ready for it, because
Hmm.
again, people exercise, especially high intensity exercise, can trigger
Right.
the feelings of an anxiety attack. So we're very careful
Hmm.
about when and who starts to actually exercise.
Yeah.
Um, Eliminating processed foods, because sugar and processed crap and chemicals definitely trigger a whole lot of a cascade of no-nos in the
Hmm.
body.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think the some things that definitely what you mentioned have helped me a ton is one, guided meditation for sure has helped me a ton. I used to use Headspace a lot. Um,
Yeah.
but that is and I think most people associate guided or even meditation in general as like just sitting or laying
Mm,
down, but you can do it walking, you could do
yeah.
it eating, you could do it cooking, right? I think that's the most overlooked part about meditation is there's so many ways you can do it and so that you can get comfortable with it. I love the journaling. I definitely relate to it where like sometimes it feels very resistant, right? I have one journal where it's like it started in 2015. I just finished it January this year, right? So it's like very spread out and
Yep.
sporadic.
Yep.
Um, but I think both of those things are amazing. I think obviously kind of like you talked about too, it's like what else can we take care of? Can we take care of our nutrition, right? Can we monitor our exercise or just some general movement? I think both of those things are absolutely amazing. Is there something for you that helps a ton specifically when you feel anxious or
Yeah.
anything like that? Of
So do you know, and I don't recommend this for most people, and I will explain why after. Have you seen Inception?
course.
Okay. You're right.
Leo DiCaprio?
Yeah. And Levitt,
Yeah.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt,
Okay,
Quality.
of course, yes.
Yeah. So in Inception, they go into dreams, right? And then there's a dream within a dream, dream within a dream
Hmm.
within. Okay. But they have something called a totem. And that's how they
Mm.
make themselves aware that they either are dreaming or they're in real life. So I believe for Joseph Gordon-Levitt, it's a top and he spins it. And if the top doesn't fall, he's in a dream. But if the top eventually falls, he's in reality.
Hmm.
So a totem was something to ground him.
Yeah.
My totem is my direct messages on Instagram. because
Hmm.
when I'm spiraling, when I'm feeling anxious, there is inevitably a question or someone in my DMs who needs something from me. There is someone I can be of service to.
Mm,
So as soon as I open my DMs and I find that question or I find that comment that says, "Oh my God, Jamie, like, thank you so much for that reel you shared about this or that," or "Hey, I absolutely love your relationship. You guys are so authentic."
mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm grounded. I'm good.
Mm,
Did my thing. But again, the reason I don't suggest this is because for most people, social media is a rabbit hole. It is a
yeah,
vortex full of negativity and comparison.
yeah,
I've learned that I don't use it. It's a tool for me, and that's not how I use it. Um, so for me, it's my work, and I
yeah.
love my work calms me down.
Interesting. And I guess when did you discover that? And do you think that is something that is going to be long lasting, or you think it's something where it's like it works right now and that's what matters?
So I started it in 2020 in the height of COVID when I was
Mm-hmm.
had no like I think my anxiety was really bad because I had no idea what I was going to do with my business.
Mm,
And I started using it more, but then the more work I did on myself, the more self-development I did,
yeah,
the less anxiety I had. So when you say, is it going to be a long-term thing? I mean, my
yeah.
anxiety has already experienced like an 87% reduction.
Wow.
So by next year, if we're looking at 98,
Yeah,
yeah, I guess diving into my DMs is still a long-term thing, but
yeah.
anxiety isn't a long-term thing for me. This
Right.
is a plan to have it next
Mm,
year.
yeah. I love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to think about it because it's because yeah, I mean if you look back to even like you said just 4 years ago, your anxiety was exponentially higher. And then each year, if you look at it, it's whether it's better coping strategies, whether it's better awareness, whether it's just understanding triggers or environments that you don't like being in or anything like that, or people you don't like being around.
Yeah.
Has it been have you had to set up boundaries in your life to help with anxiety or feelings of overwhelmed?
Yeah. So this is a great one. Because they really didn't cut so I've tried. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Start there. I've tried, but it wasn't until I went on a plant medicine retreat in Austin in
Okay.
of this year that I
Wow.
realized how much I was using my work as a coping mechanism for anxiety. So instead of
Mm,
just answering a DM or two until the feeling passed, I
yeah.
was until 8 or 9, either on my laptop or I was just not present because I
Mm-hmm.
was so about keeping my business afloat.
Yeah.
But then finally, again, plant medicine, obviously a lot of personal development. I had a life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, essentially it was you're working so hard to build a life. You're working so hard making a living, you
Mm,
forget to make a life.
yeah.
So honestly, other than like this podcast, I
Mm-hmm.
don't I don't work after 7 p.m. and only
Yeah.
sometimes do I take sales calls from 6:15 to 7. And that's only because I skip out in the middle of my day to go do CrossFit and
Cool.
I'm gone for 2 hours. So I come back, I have dinner with Katie, I take a 6:15 to 7 sales call, and then I'm done for the night.
Mm, I love that. So for you, it's big on setting a work boundary of this is when I am done working so that you can honestly appreciate what you really want to fucking do and love,
Oh,
right?
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Because what's the point? Like if you're just working and then you're just making sales, but you never enjoy the money or the house that
Mm,
sales make, there is no point in the sales.
yeah, 1000%. I think that's so important. I think and I think being present is difficult for a lot of people, especially obviously with phones nowadays, all that. And I think and can we talk a little bit about your plant medicine journey? That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah. So it was interesting. So I had the life coach and he had a
Yeah.
6 week program and then it kind of culminated in whoever wanted to could attend this 4 day retreat in Austin. And he had about 9 of us, 5 girls, 4 guys on this compound. There were there was like 2 side houses and a main house.
Mm,
And there were 2 facilitators and we did a journey on Thursday night from about 5 until midnight or 1,
Wow.
and integration on Friday. So literally, Ryan, 12 hours of talk therapy, talking about what came up,
Ooh.
what group affected you, what did you notice from others. Everyone raise your hand and talk about your experience with Jaime last night, and then you got all of this back.
Whoa.
It was a lot. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, a journey from 4 p.m. till about 11 or 12. So we started an hour earlier, tried to finish.
Mm-hmm.
Sunday, another integration day with a somatic therapist, a breath work specialist,
Mm.
and then even more. What was your experience this time? So it was a combination of psilocybin, MDMA, sassafras, something else that I forget,
Mm-hmm.
a mild opiate, and I think those were the 5 that
Mm-hmm.
we with, and it was essentially custom. So the
Mm.
facilitator would come around and he would feel you out, and this is what he went to shaman school for.
Wow.
He'd say, "What are you experiencing?" And you tell him, and you would talk about your feelings a little bit, and then he'd say, "You either need more head, heart, body, or spirit."
Mm.
He would determine what wall needed to come down. So if
Wow.
you were not wanting to be touched because some shit from your childhood and trauma was
Mm.
coming, you got more body so that someone in the group that you felt comfortable with could put their hand on you and it would be okay. And
Mm.
that wall would come down.
Wow. How how did you feel like as soon as you were like going home, right? Like did you feel sort of rejuvenated? Did you feel like you were like seeing for the first time, like very present?
Yeah. So it was, and I'm sure you can relate to this with some of your clients. So here's the thing.
Yeah.
I had told Katie that, like, you know what? I promise I'm not going to work after 7 anymore. Like, I swear today, my diet's going to start Monday. Like, coach, this is the last time I'm fucking up. I
Yeah.
swear. Right. And she's heard it before. But I knew as soon as I was going to get home from Austin that that was going to be it. And if I ever had to work late, it was going to be because I'm going to Ultra tomorrow. So I'm
Right.
taking calls, right? Like, I'm not working at all for the next 4 days. Yeah,
Right.
I'm going to do a podcast at 9 at night, right? But it wasn't coming out of desperation or anxiety anymore. It's coming again
Mm.
because I'm going to enjoy that which I've worked so hard to build.
Right.
So I was on this high, and I was like so ready because I knew that I was actually going to stick to the diet this time.
Yeah.
Problem was, she had heard it before. I had lied blatantly. I had broken promises before. So I
Mm.
was high, and then I was low because I could see her face, and I said, "What's wrong? Why aren't you as excited as I am?" And she said, "Because I've heard it before." And my heart broke in that instance, and I said,
Mm.
"So shitty. That would feel so shitty if I was you." Okay,
Mm.
stop talking about it. I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
We can talk about what that looks like because that's the worst case scenario. And I said, but we won't have to talk about it because I'm just going to do it.
Wow. I love
Yeah.
that. I love that. Well, one, I loved how you were able to have empathy for her point of view, right? Because if you weren't able to say like, oh, you feel this because I've freaking told you a bunch of times, then maybe you come out more defensive, or maybe it's like, no, of course I'm gonna. But I also love how you're like, I'm gonna stop talking and just show you that
Do
this is
it.
happening, right?
Yeah.
And you just backed it up with action. I think that's so cool. That's amazing.
Thank
Wow.
you.
Um, so I have one more question for you. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe two. Maybe we'll start with one. For the name of this podcast, it's called These Little Moments Podcast. Okay. And basically the reason I named it this was because I went to a seminar like 4 or 5 years ago where basically everybody was sharing a lot of their vulnerabilities, whether it's like they struggle with nutrition, they struggle with fitness, overeating, binge eating, eating disorders, whatever it might be. And for me, I felt compelled to just share. I was like, listen, like I've been working out forever. I've been fine with nutrition forever. Like that's not my thing. Like my thing is I struggle with anxiety, I struggle with depression. And it was the first time I ever shared my mental health journey and been like truly vulnerable. And I decided to do it in front of like a group of 60 plus people for whatever
Right?
reason.
Why not?
Right.
Okay.
And so for me, that was my little moment that sort of started this catalyst to, how I'm going to work on my mental health, how I'm going to incorporate different things on how I coach people and all that. What would you say, and we've touched on a good amount of them already, but what would you say has been a little moment that stands out to you that is made you the person you are right now?
Yeah. So it was on a drive that Katie and I had to Miami going to the biggest CrossFit event. It's called Wadapalooza and like second only to the CrossFit Games. It's the second biggest, second most prestigious CrossFit event, and it's held in Miami. And myself and two other girls qualified for it.
Wow.
So Katie and I were driving, and it was like in the car that I had the analogy in my head that I was so busy building this castle, this really nice house, this perfect life. But in the meantime, I had put my princess like up there alone.
Mm,
She was sitting in her nice castle all alone. And I was like, oh my God, that's so like, and it really clicked. And she and I were talking about it because it was really important for us to discuss this. And also, although Saturday night was the last time I had taken the medicine, I was high till Tuesday.
mm,
And then Thursday is when we left for Miami. So obviously Wednesday was a long work day. So Thursday was really the first time we had a chance to connect sober while I was sober.
hmm.
Um, and at some point in the conversation, when I'm apologizing profusely and realizing I see her point of view, she starts crying. I was like, oh my God, why are you crying?
Yeah.
She said, because I realized how I've been in the fog for 6 years.
Wow.
Like you haven't been great. It's been a good marriage,
Yeah.
but you've been not present working on this business. And I'm so happy for you. But what if you do everything you say you're going to do, but I'm still in a fog?
Wow.
I said, oh, this is a much bigger problem than I thought it would.
Mm,
And I said, okay, so again, going back to this, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I'm going to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. That little moment where she's like, what if I'm still in the fog? I said, oh my God, I could actually lose the thing that I've been working so hard for, which is
mm,
my marriage. She's the only one in the entire world that I
mm.
actually,
Right.
um, and I've been so, and for whatever reason, she had stuck with me for six
Hmm.
years,
Yeah.
held on. But what if once the fog clears, she's like, yeah, but I'm tired now. I waited. Yeah. So that's when I really, again, there's no going back. Like you commit
Yeah.
to the diet and you finish it. You do
Hmm.
the way.
Wow. That
Yeah.
is really fucking powerful. That is, well, because not, and thank you for sharing that, because I think that's so real, right? Where it's like, hey, even if someone does the work and tries to heal, right, then the other person still, it's totally valid for the other person just to be like, hey,
Yeah.
still not there, right? And I think the fact that you two were able to communicate that though, and the fact that that stands out for you as like your why, and that you're like, I was close to losing something that I dearly cared about, and that was your catalyst for getting to the person you are now and sustaining that, right? I think
Yeah.
that is awesome and beautiful. So thank you for sharing that. It's amazing.
Thank you for asking me. I love that
Of
question.
course, of course. So last question, where can people find you?
Ah, Instagram is the best way to get in touch with me. I am at JAIM and the number 91. So Jaime 91. You could also find me on Facebook, Jamie Filer, but mostly Instagram.
Amazing. Well, thank you. Great job, Miss Jamie.
Thanks
I
for having me
appreciate you.
with you.
Yeah, of course. Well, like I said, your presentation really stuck out to me, and like your personality, and you fucking just owned the stage. I was like, awesome. It was like I said, it's great practical advice and personality. I was like, she's cool. I was like, she's cool. Okay. Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate you, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Take care, Ryan.